At 11:37 on February 20th, 1944, First Lieutenant William Lawley sat in the left seat of a B-17 Flying Fortress, climbing through 12,000 feet over the English Channel, watching the instrument panel of an aircraft that had never seen combat before today. 23 years old, 9 combat missions, 10 if he made it home. The Germans had sent approximately 20 Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters to intercept the formations heading for Leipzig. This was the first day of Operation Argument, Big Week, the largest coordinated bomber offensive in history. Over 1,000 American heavy bombers crossing into Germany. The target was the Messerschmitt aircraft factories at Leipzig. The 8th Air Force needed to destroy German fighter production before the invasion of Europe. Without air superiority, the landings would fail. Lawley's B-17 was brand new. Douglas Aircraft had built her at Long Beach in December. Serial number 42-38109. The crew had named her Cabin in the Sky. She'd arrived at RAF Chelveston 10 days ago. This was her first mission. The 305th Bomb Group had lost 21 aircraft in the previous 3 months. Most crews didn't survive their first 5 missions. The Luftwaffe concentrated their attacks on stragglers and damaged bombers. Once you fell out of formation, the fighters swarmed. Average survival time after losing an engine was 4 minutes. Lawley had joined the 364th Squadron in November. He'd watched 11 B-17s go down. 88 men. Some got out. Most didn't. The pattern was always the same. German fighters came in from 12 o'clock high, 20mm cannon shells. The bombers couldn't take that kind of punishment. Not head on. The nose was too thin. Lieutenant Paul Murphy sat in the right seat, the copilot, 24 years old, 12 missions. He'd been shot down over France in January, spent 8 days with the resistance, made it back. Murphy never talked about it. Behind them in the radio room, Staff Sergeant Thomas Dempsey monitored the frequencies. The ball turret gunner, Technical Sergeant Joseph Kobierecki, was already in position beneath the aircraft. Staff Sergeant Carol Rowley manned the top turret. The waist gunners, Sergeant Ralph Braswell and another crewman, waited at their stations. Sergeant Alfred Wendt covered the tail. Lieutenant Harry Seraphine navigated. Lieutenant Harry Mason handled the bombardier's position. 10 men, 4,000 pounds of bombs, 3 hours to Leipzig. The RAF had hit the city the night before. 700 bombers, 78 aircraft lost. Now it was the Americans' turn. Daylight precision bombing. The theory was that the B-17s could defend themselves with massed firepower, fly in tight formation, 13 50 caliber machine guns per aircraft. The reality was different. Leipzig was deep, 500 miles into Germany. The P-47 Thunderbolts could escort them part of the way, maybe to the German border. Then the bombers would be alone. The new P-51 Mustangs had the range, but there weren't enough of them yet. Lawley checked the engine gauges. 4 Wright Cyclone engines, 1,800 horsepower each. Everything looked good. Fuel flow normal, oil pressure steady, manifold pressure where it should be. The formation was tight. Cabin in the Sky held her position in the low squadron. The intelligence briefing that morning had been clear. Expect heavy fighter opposition. The Luftwaffe would defend the aircraft factories. JG-300, JG-301, JG-302, the specialized day fighter units. They'd been reorganized specifically to counter the American daylight raids. Their tactics were evolving, more aggressive, more coordinated. The bomber stream stretched for miles, B-17s and B-24s, flying at 23,000 feet. Contrails marked their path across the sky. Every German radar station from the coast to Berlin would be tracking them. Every fighter squadron would be scrambling. Lawley had flown 9 missions: Brunswick, Wilhelmshaven, Frankfurt, Oschersleben. Each one harder than the last. The flak got worse. The fighters got better. The losses mounted. February had been brutal. The weather finally cleared. Now they were going every day, pushing deep, hitting the factories, trying to break the Luftwaffe before summer. This was supposed to be the beginning, the offensive that would win air superiority. The invasion depended on it. If they couldn't destroy the German fighters on the ground and in the air, the beaches would be a slaughter. If you want to see how Lawley's crew survived what happened next over Leipzig, please hit that like button. It helps us share these forgotten stories with more people. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Lawley. The fighter controllers in Germany were already vectoring interceptors toward the bomber stream. Somewhere over western Germany, Major Walter Breed was climbing into his Messerschmitt, leading the first group of JG-301, 20 fighters, coming north from Munich. They'd hit the formations as they turned off target. Cabin in the Sky crossed the German coast at 11:53, 3 hours and 17 minutes until they'd know if she'd ever fly home. The formation reached the initial point at 14:21. The turn onto the bomb run. The 305th Bomb Group led the 1st Bombardment Division, 36 B-17s in tight formation. Cabin in the Sky flew in the low squadron. Position 7, 3rd aircraft from the left. Leipzig appeared through the haze. Industrial city, 500,000 people, 3 Messerschmitt factories, Heiterblick, Obtnaundorf, Mockau. The primary targets. The RAF had started fires the night before. Smoke still rose from the residential districts. Now the Americans would hit the production facilities. The flak started at 14:24. German 88mm guns, 600 feet per second, bursts at 23,000 feet, black puffs blooming across the sky. The formation flew straight through it. No evasive action on the bomb run. The Norden bomb site required steady flight, precise altitude, constant speed. Lawley held the aircraft level. Murphy called out the flak bursts. Navigator Seraphine confirmed the heading. Bombardier Mason was in the nose, eyes on the target. The aircraft shuddered each time a burst went off nearby. Fragments rattled against the fuselage. The No. 3 engine surged, then steadied. The bomb bay doors opened at 14:26. 4,000 pounds. 8 500-pound general-purpose bombs, high explosive, fused for impact. The target was industrial buildings, machine tools, assembly lines, the factories that built the fighters that killed American bomber crews. Mason released at 14:28. The aircraft lurched upward, 4 tons lighter. Lawley banked left, following the lead aircraft. The formation turned away from Leipzig, heading west, back toward England, 300 miles over enemy territory, then the North Sea, then home. The Messerschmitts hit them at 14:31. They came from 12 o'clock high, diving through the formation. 20 aircraft, Bf-109 G6 fighters, JG-301. Major Walter Breed leading. The head-on attack. The tactic that worked best against the B-17. Hit the nose. Kill the pilots. The bomber went down. The German fighters opened fire at 800 yards, 20mm cannons, 13mm machine guns, closing at a combined speed of 500 miles per hour. The bomber gunners returned fire. 50 caliber machine guns. Tracers crossed in the air. The fighters broke left and right, flashing past. One Messerschmitt came straight at Cabin in the Sky, nose guns flickering. Mason fired from the bombardier's position. The top turret swung forward. Rowley hammered out bursts. The fighter didn't break. The first 20mm shell hit the cockpit at 14:31 and 17 seconds. It came through the windscreen between the pilot and co-pilot positions, exploded inside. The blast shredded Murphy's chest, killed him instantly. His body slumped forward onto the control column. The aircraft nosed down. The second shell hit the instrument panel. Fragments sprayed across the cockpit. Lawley took shrapnel to the face. Blood poured from cuts across his forehead and cheeks. It ran into his eyes, covered the instruments. He couldn't see. The third shell hit the No. 2 engine, the inboard left. Fire bloomed from the cowling, orange flame streaming back past the wing. The engine kept running, burning. The fire spread toward the fuel tanks. 4 more shells hammered into the fuselage, the radio room, the waist. Men screaming on the intercom. Dempsey hit. Braswell hit. The other waist gunner hit. Kobierecki in the ball turret taking fragments. Rowley wounded in the top turret. Went in the tail reporting damage. 8 men wounded, 1 dead. The aircraft was diving, falling out of formation, 300 miles inside Germany. Murphy's body pushed the control column forward. Lawley grabbed it with his right hand, tried to pull back. The blood made everything slippery. His right hand wouldn't grip. Shrapnel had torn through his right arm. The muscles weren't responding. He reached across with his left hand, grabbed the control column, pulled. The aircraft kept diving. Murphy's weight was too much. Lawley couldn't overcome it with one hand. The airspeed indicator climbed past 250 miles per hour, 270, 290. The wings were shaking. Structural limits. The B-17 could take a lot, but not this. Not much longer. Lawley braced his feet against the instrument panel, hooked his left arm around Murphy's chest, pulled the dead copilot back off the controls. The body was heavy, dead weight, 170 pounds. Lawley dragged him clear, shoved him to the right, away from the column. He grabbed the control column with his left hand, pulled back. The aircraft started to respond. Slowly. The nose came up. The dive began to flatten. 13,000 feet. 12,000. The wings groaning under the load. At 11,000 feet, cabin in the sky leveled out. Alone. 5 miles behind the formation. On fire. And the Messerschmitts were coming back around for another pass. The number 2 engine burned at 11,000 feet. Flames stretched 20 feet behind the wing. The fire was spreading. Reaching toward the fuel tank in the inboard section. 1,700 gallons of high-octane aviation fuel. If it reached the tank, the wing would explode. Lawley tried to feather the engine, hit the switch with his left hand. Nothing happened. The propeller kept windmilling, feeding air to the fire. He hit the fire suppression, the carbon dioxide system. The gauge showed discharge. The flames didn't stop. The intercom crackled, voices overlapping, damage reports from every position. Dempsey in the radio room had taken shrapnel to both legs, couldn't stand. Braswell hit in the shoulder and side. The other waist gunner wounded in the arm. Kobierecki in the ball turret had fragments in his back. Rowley in the top turret caught steel across his ribs. Went in the tail reporting hydraulic fluid spraying. Mason came up from the nose, the bombardier. He saw Murphy slumped in the right seat. Blood everywhere. Lawley flying left-handed, blood running down Lawley's face, covering the instruments. Mason grabbed the first aid kit, started working on Lawley's wounds. The Messerschmitts came back at 14:34. 4 fighters, Bf-109s. They'd broken off to regroup. Now they returned. They could see cabin in the sky was crippled, alone, burning. Easy kill. They came in from the rear quarter, 8 o'clock high. Went open fire from the tail, 50 caliber rounds. The other gunners tracked the fighters. Everyone who could still man a gun. The Messerschmitts broke left, came around again, made another pass. Cannon fire walking across the fuselage. More holes, more damage. Then they broke off. Lawley didn't know why. Maybe low on fuel. Maybe low on ammunition. Maybe they assumed the B-17 would go down on its own. The fighters turned east, headed back to their bases. Cabin in the sky was alone. 11,000 feet, burning. 3 engines. Somewhere over central Germany. Lawley checked what instruments still worked. Airspeed 130 miles per hour. Altitude holding. The compass showed west-northwest. Probably right. Hard to tell. Blood covered half the panel. He wiped it away with his left hand. It immediately ran back down. Mason finished bandaging Lawley's face. The cuts weren't deep, but head wounds bled. Lawley could see better now. Not well, but better. His right arm hung useless. Shrapnel had severed something, nerves or tendons. He couldn't lift it. The number 2 engine still burned, flames bright orange in the afternoon sun. Lawley tried the feathering switch again. Still nothing. The propeller kept spinning. He reduced power on the other 3 engines, slowed the aircraft, reduced the airflow past the burning engine. The flames didn't stop, but they didn't get worse. The hydraulic system was failing, the pressure gauge dropping. Wendt had reported fluid spraying in the tail. Multiple lines hit. Without hydraulics, they'd lost the brakes, lost the turret drives, lost normal control feel. The flight controls still worked, cable operated, but everything was harder. Lawley called for a damage assessment. He needed to know what still functioned, what didn't, whether they could make it home. The reports came back. Radio mostly dead, ball turret jammed, top turret working, tail position working, oxygen system damaged, electrical system failing, 1 generator out, running on batteries, fuel transfer system questionable, landing gear status unknown, bomb bay doors wouldn't close, and 8 men wounded. They were 300 miles inside Germany, 200 miles to the coast, then the North Sea, then England, flying at 130 miles per hour, losing altitude slowly, on fire. 3 engines. If the fire reached the fuel tanks, they had maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Lawley made the decision at 14:41. He called the crew on intercom. His voice was steady, matter of fact. They were going to bail out. The aircraft was too damaged, too dangerous. Everyone needed to prepare, get their parachutes, move to the exits, wait for his command. The crew started moving, helping the wounded, getting ready to jump. 10,000 feet was good altitude, enough time for the chutes to open, enough time to get clear. Then Braswell came forward, the waist gunner. He'd been checking the wounded. He had a report. Dempsey couldn't jump, both legs torn up. He'd bleed out before he hit the ground. And Kobierecki was worse, fragments deep in his back. He couldn't move, couldn't climb out of the ball turret, couldn't bail out. 2 men, 2 wounded to jump. If everyone else bailed out, those 2 would die when the aircraft went in. Lawley looked at the burning engine, looked at the instruments, looked at the dead copilot slumped beside him. Then he made the second decision. He was staying with the aircraft. He'd try to fly it home. Try to save the 2 men who couldn't jump. Everyone else had the option. Stay or go. Their choice. The crew chose to stay. All of them. No one bailed out. If Lawley was flying this burning wreck home one-handed, they'd man their guns. Cabin in the Sky flew west at 10,000 feet, 125 miles per hour, the number 2 engine still burning. Lawley held the control column with his left hand. His right arm hung dead. He couldn't use the throttles properly, couldn't adjust the trim, couldn't do anything that required 2 hands. Mason stayed in the cockpit. The bombardier became the co-pilot. He'd never flown a B-17, never trained on the controls, but he could reach the switches, adjust the throttles, work the fuel mixture. Lawley gave him instructions. Mason followed them. They needed to gain altitude. 10,000 feet wasn't enough. The clouds were at 8,000. If they had to fly through weather, they needed more margin. But climbing required power. Power meant more airflow. More airflow fed the fire. Lawley tried anyway, added power to the 3 good engines. The aircraft climbed slowly. 10,500, 11,000. The fire on number 2 grew brighter, flames streaming farther back. He reduced power, leveled off at 11,200 feet. The compass showed 270, due west. Germany stretched below them. Forests, fields, small towns. Lawley couldn't see well enough to navigate visually. Blood still ran into his eyes. The instruments were barely readable. Seraphine came forward, the navigator, gave them a heading, 285, west-northwest, toward the coast. The fuel situation was critical. They'd burned through the main tanks on the bomb run. Now they were running on auxiliary fuel. The transfer system was damaged. The pumps might not be working. If a tank ran dry and they couldn't switch, that engine would quit. With 3 engines already strained, losing another would put them in the ground. Mason watched the fuel gauges, called out the numbers. Number 1 tank, 300 gallons. Number 3, 280. Number 4, 320. Number 2 was gone. That engine was dead weight now, still burning, still windmilling, creating drag. The hydraulic pressure hit 0 at 1453. The system was dry. All the fluid lost through the damaged lines in the tail. Without hydraulics, the landing gear wouldn't extend normally. They'd have to use the emergency hand crank. 200 turns, 10 minutes of cranking, if the mechanism wasn't damaged. The electrical system failed at 1458. The remaining generator quit. They were on batteries now. Limited time. Maybe an hour, maybe less. When the batteries died, they'd lose the radio, lose the instruments that required power, lose the fuel gauges. Lawley's vision was blurring. Blood loss, shock, pain. His face throbbed where the shrapnel had hit. His right arm was on fire, nerves screaming. He couldn't let go of the control column. If he relaxed for a second, the aircraft would roll. The trim was wrong. The burned engine created asymmetric thrust. He had to hold left aileron constantly, hold left rudder. His left arm was cramping, his left leg shaking from holding the rudder pedal. The fire went out at 1507. The number 2 engine stopped burning. The flames just died. Lawley didn't know why. Maybe the fuel finally exhausted. Maybe the fire burned through something critical and starved itself. The propeller kept windmilling, still creating drag, but no more flames. No more immediate threat of explosion. Seraphine estimated they'd crossed out of the Leipzig defense zone. They were over western Germany now, probably near Kassel, maybe 180 miles from the coast. Another hour and a half, if nothing else went wrong. Something went wrong at 15:14. The number 4 engine started losing oil pressure. The outboard right. The gauge dropped from 60 pounds to 40, then 30, then 20. Oil temperature climbing. The engine was failing. Bearing seizure. Or a oil line hit by flak. Or fragments from the fighter attack. Didn't matter which. The result was the same. If the engine seized, the propeller would stop. Windmilling created drag. A stopped propeller created more drag. And they'd be down to 2 engines, both on the left side. The asymmetric thrust would be worse, much worse. Lawley reduced power on number 4. Watched the gauges. The pressure stabilized at 15 pounds. Not good, but not dropping. The temperature held steady. He left it there. Minimum power. Just enough to keep it contributing. Not enough to seize it. 2 engines at full power. 1 at minimum power. 1 dead and windmilling. Still burning fuel. Still creating drag. They were down to 115 miles per hour. Altitude slowly bleeding off. 11,000 feet. 10,900. 10,800. The formation was long gone. Somewhere ahead over the North Sea. Safe. Protected by fighters. Cabin in the sky was alone over Germany. Crippled. Descending. Every German radar operator could see them. Every German fighter controller knew they were there. A damaged bomber. Easy target. Mason asked if they should try calling for escort, use the emergency frequency, ask for fighter coverage. Lawley shook his head. The radio was mostly dead. Even if they could transmit, the fighters wouldn't come this deep. Not for one aircraft. They were on their own. 160 miles from the coast, descending through 10,500 feet, flying at 115 miles per hour, and Lawley's vision was starting to go dark around the edges. Lawley's head dropped forward at 15:22. His hand went slack on the control column. The aircraft rolled right. Nose dropped. Cabin in the sky entered a descending turn. 9,000 feet. 8,500. Picking up speed. Mason saw it immediately. He grabbed Lawley's shoulder, shook him. No response. The pilot had passed out. Blood loss, shock, exhaustion. Lawley had been flying for 45 minutes with his face torn open and his right arm useless, holding the aircraft with one hand, fighting the asymmetric thrust. His body had finally quit. Mason pulled back on the co-pilot's control column. The aircraft responded slowly. He had no training, didn't know the proper technique, just pulled back, leveled the wings. The B-17 came out of the dive at 7,800 feet. He couldn't fly it, didn't know how. He could hold it level for a few seconds, but Lawley had been compensating for the dead engine, for the damaged controls, for the wrong trim. Mason didn't know what to do. The aircraft started rolling again. He shook Lawley harder, slapped his face, shouted his name. The pilot's eyes fluttered, opened. Lawley looked confused, disoriented, didn't seem to know where he was. Then his left hand moved, found the control column, gripped it, took control. The aircraft steadied. Lawley blinked, trying to focus. His vision was tunneling. He could barely see the instruments. Mason told him the altitude, 7,400 feet, heading still west-northwest. Lawley nodded, adjusted the controls. They flew in silence for 10 minutes. Lawley fighting to stay conscious, Mason watching him, ready to grab the controls again if the pilot passed out. The crew in the back tended the wounded. Dempsey was going into shock. Kobierecki still couldn't move. The others patched holes, threw out equipment to reduce weight. Everything not essential. Ammunition cans, empty oxygen bottles, anything loose. The clouds appeared ahead at 1538, a solid layer, 8,000 feet high, stretching north and south as far as they could see. They'd have to fly through it. No way around, no altitude to climb over it. Lawley aimed for a gap. There wasn't one. They entered the clouds at 7,200 feet. Everything went gray. No horizon, no ground reference, pure instrument flying. Lawley stared at the attitude indicator, the artificial horizon, the only thing that told him which way was up. His left hand shook on the control column. His left leg cramped on the rudder pedal. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore. The turbulence hit inside the clouds. The aircraft bucked, dropped, rose, rolled left. Lawley corrected. overcorrected. The wings rocked. He couldn't feel the controls properly, couldn't judge the pressure. Everything was numb. Everything was distant. He was flying through fog inside his own head. They broke out of the clouds at 1547, 6,000 feet, lower than when they entered. Lawley had lost altitude without realizing it. The ground was closer now. German countryside, rivers, roads, towns. They were still over enemy territory. Seraphine came forward again. New navigation fix. They were 40 miles from the Dutch border. The coast was another 60 miles beyond that. 100 miles total, maybe 50 minutes, if they maintained speed, if they maintained altitude, if nothing else failed. The number 4 engine quit at 1551. No warning, no gauge indication. The engine just stopped. Oil pressure had finally hit zero. The bearings seized. The propeller stopped turning. Locked. A flat disc creating maximum drag. The aircraft yawed hard right. Lawley pushed left rudder. His leg was already at the limit. He pushed harder. The rudder pedal hit the stop. It wasn't enough. The aircraft entered a right turn. Slow. Constant. Lawley couldn't stop it. He had full left rudder. Full left aileron. The control column pressed against his chest. The aircraft kept turning. The asymmetric thrust was too much. 2 engines on the left, 1 dead on the right, 1 seized on the right. The right wing was producing nothing but drag. Mason tried to help, added power to the left engines. It made the turn worse, reduced power. The aircraft started descending. They were in a slow spiral, 6,000 feet, 5,800, 5,600, turning right, descending, heading back east, back into Germany. Lawley could barely see, barely think. His left arm screamed. His left leg shook. He couldn't hold the rudder much longer, couldn't fight the turn. The aircraft was flying him now, not the other way around. He was just hanging on. The Dutch border passed beneath them at 1554. They'd made it out of Germany. They were over Holland now, occupied territory, still enemy ground, but closer to home, closer to the coast. 45 miles. 5,000 feet, still turning right, still descending. Lawley tried everything. Reduced power on the left engines, increased power. Nothing worked. The physics were wrong. The aircraft wanted to turn right, wanted to descend, wanted to spiral into the ground, and there was nothing he could do to stop it with one hand. Mason watched the altimeter, watched the compass. They were turning through south, heading back toward Germany, losing 500 feet per minute. They had 10 minutes, maybe less. Then they'd be too low, too slow. The spiral would tighten, the aircraft would stall, and 30,000 pounds of crippled bomber would fall out of the sky. Mason thought of the bombs. They'd dropped them over Leipzig, but the bomb bay doors were still open, had been open for 90 minutes, creating drag, creating instability. He looked at the controls, found the door switch, hit it. Nothing happened. The hydraulics were dead. The doors stayed open. Lawley was fading again. His head drooped, his hand loosened. Mason grabbed his shoulder, kept him awake, kept him focused. The pilot's eyes cleared slightly. He looked at the instruments. 4,500 feet. Still turning, still descending. He did something Mason didn't understand. Reduced power on both left engines. The aircraft slowed. 95 miles per hour. 85. The controls got mushy. Less airflow over the surfaces, less authority. But the turn rate decreased. The spiral flattened slightly. Lawley pulled back on the control column, trading speed for altitude. The airspeed dropped to 75. The stall warning buffet started. The aircraft shuddered. Right on the edge. Any slower and they'd stall. Any faster and the turn would tighten. He held it there, right at the limit. 4,000 feet. 3,800. The descent rate decreased. 300 feet per minute. 200. 150. The turn continued, but slower, more manageable. They were heading east now, back toward Germany, but the spiral had stabilized. Seraphine called from the navigation station. They were 20 miles from the coast. If they could hold altitude, hold heading, they'd cross over the North Sea in 15 minutes. Lawley didn't respond, couldn't spare the concentration. All his focus was on the controls, on staying conscious, on keeping the aircraft flying. The German fighters appeared at 1604. 2 Messerschmitts, Bf-109s. They'd been tracking the crippled bomber, watching it descend, waiting for it to crash. Now they came in to finish it. They approached from the port side. 7 o'clock. climbing to attack position. Went called from the tail. Fighters coming in. Lawley heard him. Couldn't do anything about it. Couldn't maneuver. Could barely keep the aircraft in the air. The gunners would have to handle it. He kept flying. The Messerschmitts made their pass at 16:05. Came in from the rear quarter. Cannon fire. 20mm shells. Rowley fired from the top turret. Went fired from the tail. The waist gunners fired. Tracers streaking out. The fighters broke off. Came around again. Made another pass. More cannon fire. More hits. The radio room took more damage. The vertical stabilizer holed, but nothing critical. The engines kept running. The controls still responded. Then the Messerschmitts broke off. Turned away, headed east. Lawley didn't know why. Maybe they were out of ammunition. Maybe they saw other targets. Maybe they decided this bomber was already dead. Didn't need more shooting. Cabin in the Sky flew on. 3,600 feet, 80 miles per hour. Still turning right. Still heading east. The Dutch coast was 15 miles away. Might as well have been 1,000. Lawley tried adding power again. Just a little. The left engines came up. The turn tightened immediately. He reduced power. Back to where it was. The aircraft was telling him something. This was all she had. This speed. This power setting. This slow descending turn. Any more and she'd kill them. He had to accept it. Had to fly what the aircraft would give him. Not what he wanted. What she'd allow. 75 miles per hour. 3,400 feet. Turning right. One full circle every 3 minutes. The mathematics were simple. 20 miles to the coast. At 75 miles per hour. 16 minutes. But they were turning. Not flying straight. The turn added distance. Call it 25 miles. 20 minutes. They were descending at 100 feet per minute. 2,000 feet in 20 minutes. They'd cross the coast at 1,400 feet. If they were lucky. If the fuel lasted. If the engines held. If Lawley stayed conscious. If the aircraft stayed together. 4 ifs. Any one failure and they'd go in over Holland. German-occupied Holland. If they survived the crash, they'd be prisoners. If they survived the crash. The number 3 engine caught fire at 1612, the inboard left. Same position as number 2 on the right side. But number 2 had burned out. This one was fresh. Orange flames streaming from the cowling. The engine that had been carrying them. Maximum power for 90 minutes. Something finally let go. A fuel line, an oil seal, didn't matter. It was burning. Lawley hit the fire suppression. The carbon dioxide system discharged. The flames kept burning. Brighter now, fed by the airflow. He couldn't feather the propeller. No hydraulics. Couldn't shut off the fuel properly. The valves required hydraulic pressure. The engine burned. The propeller windmilled, adding drag to the left side. Now they had drag on both sides. Both inboard engines. One seized and stopped, one burning and windmilling. It almost balanced. Almost. The turn slowed slightly. Not much, but measurable. The aircraft steadied a bit. The fire was helping. Perverse physics. 3,000 feet. The Dutch coast was 12 miles ahead, visible now through the haze. The gray line of the North Sea beyond. England somewhere past that. Home. If they could make it. If the burning engine didn't explode. If the wing didn't fail. If Lawley didn't pass out again. Mason watched the fire. Watched the fuel gauges. Watched Lawley. The pilot's face was gray. His left hand cramped around the control column. His breathing shallow. He looked like he was dying. But he kept flying. Kept the aircraft in the air. Kept them pointed toward home. The coast was 10 miles away. The fire burned brighter. And Lawley's eyes started to close again. Lawley collapsed at 16:18. His hand released the control column. His body went limp, unconscious. Mason caught him before he fell forward, grabbed the controls again. The aircraft rolled right, started to dive. Mason pulled back, leveled the wings. 2,800 feet. He couldn't do this. Couldn't fly the aircraft. Couldn't hold it steady. The B-17 wanted to turn, wanted to descend. He was just delaying the inevitable. He shook Lawley. No response. Slapped his face. Nothing. The pilot was out cold. Mason shouted for help. Seraphine came forward from the navigator station. Between them, they held Lawley upright, kept his head back. Seraphine had smelling salts in the first aid kit. He broke one under Lawley's nose. The ammonia vapor hit. Lawley's eyes snapped open. He gasped, coughed. His hand found the control column. The aircraft steadied. 2,600 feet, 8 miles from the coast. Lawley took a breath. Another. Focused on the instruments. His vision was almost gone. Peripheral vision black. Just a tunnel straight ahead. He could see the attitude indicator, the altimeter. Nothing else mattered. The Dutch coast passed beneath them at 1623. Sandy beaches, dunes, then water. The North Sea. Gray, cold, hostile. 60 miles across to England. 40 minutes at their current speed, if they lasted that long. The No. 3 engine burned brighter over the water, flames streaming 30 feet back. The wing structure was heating. Aluminum softens at high temperature. The wing could fail, could fold up. They'd cartwheel into the sea. No survivors. 2,400 feet. Lawley calculated the glide ratio. If both remaining engines quit, they had maybe 10 miles. Not enough to reach England. They needed the engines to keep running. Both of them, all the way across. The fuel situation was critical. They'd been flying for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Combat loaded, a B-17 carried 2,800 gallons. They'd burned most of it. The gauges were bouncing near empty. Hard to read through the blood on the panel. Mason called out numbers. No. 1 tank, 50 gallons. No. 4 tank, 40 gallons. Maybe 20 minutes of fuel. Maybe less. Lawley's left arm was beyond cramping now, beyond pain. It was numb, dead. He couldn't feel his hand on the control column, couldn't feel his foot on the rudder pedal. He was flying by instrument indication, by memory, by will. His body had quit, his mind kept going. 2,000 feet. The North Sea stretched endlessly. No ships visible, no rescue if they ditched. The water temperature was 40 degrees. Survival time, maybe 10 minutes. Less for wounded men. They wouldn't last long enough for rescue. Seraphine stayed in the cockpit. Navigator turned copilot, turned nurse. He watched Lawley, watched for the signs. The drooping head, the slack hand, ready to catch him if he passed out again. Ready to try to keep the aircraft flying until Lawley came back. The English coast appeared at 1647, a dark line through the haze. Essex or Suffolk. Somewhere on the eastern shore. Home. England. 30 miles. 20 minutes. 2,000 feet. They might make it. Actually make it. The No. 1 engine quit at 1651. The outboard left. The only engine on the left side still producing power. The fuel finally exhausted. The propeller windmilled. Then Lawley feathered it. He had one shot. The emergency pneumatic system. Compressed air. Independent of hydraulics. He hit the switch. The blades rotated. The propeller stopped. Feathered position. Minimum drag. One engine left. No. 4. The outboard right. The one that had been losing oil pressure for 90 minutes. It was still running. Still producing power. Barely. Coughing. Surging. But running. The aircraft yawed left immediately. One engine on the right, none on the left. Pure asymmetric thrust. Lawley pushed right rudder. His dead left leg wouldn't move. Seraphine grabbed Lawley's leg, pulled it off the pedal. Lawley shifted, got his weight onto the right rudder, pushed, held it. The aircraft straightened slightly. 1,800 feet, 20 miles from the coast. One engine, still burning. The No. 3 fire hadn't stopped. Flames bright in the late afternoon. The wing glowing orange, the aluminum creaking, expanding, weakening. Mason watched the fuel gauge for No. 4. 30 gallons, 20, 15. When it hit 0, they'd lose the last engine. They'd be gliding. 1,800 feet, maybe 8 miles range. Not enough. They'd go in short of the coast, in the water, cold, dark, final. The engine kept running. 10 gallons, 5. The gauge bounced on empty. The engine coughed, caught, ran rough, smoothed out, still burning fuel from somewhere. Vapors, residual, something. The English coast passed beneath them at 1703, 1,400 feet. One engine, on fire. Lawley aimed for the first flat ground he could see. Couldn't pick a proper airfield, couldn't navigate, couldn't see well enough. Just needed flat ground, a field, a road, anything. A small airfield appeared ahead. Grass runways, fighter base, Red Hill, Surrey. Lawley recognized it vaguely. He'd seen it on maps. Small, but long enough for a B-17. Maybe. If he could get the gear down. If the aircraft held together. If the engine lasted 30 more seconds. The No. 3 engine was still burning. Flames wrapping around the wing. The fire that wouldn't die. The fire that was going to kill them all if Lawley didn't get this bomber on the ground in the next 60 seconds. Lawley lined up on the grass runway at Red Hill. 1,000 feet. One engine. The No. 3 still burning. Flames wrapping the wing. He couldn't judge the approach properly. Couldn't see the ground clearly. Just aimed at the green strip ahead. Hoped it was long enough. The landing gear was the next problem. No hydraulics. No normal extension. They had to use the emergency system, the hand crank. Mason found it. Started cranking. 200 turns. His arms burning. Cranking as fast as he could. The gear started coming down. Slowly. Mechanically. Inch by inch. 800 feet. Lawley reduced power on the last engine. The aircraft descended faster. Too fast. He added power back. The engine coughed. Caught. Smoothed out. Still running on fumes. On will. On nothing. Mason cranked. 50 turns. 75. 100. The main gear indicator lights didn't work. Electrical system was dead. No way to know if the gear was down and locked. Just had to trust the mechanical system. Keep cranking. Get the wheels down. 600 feet. The runway was close now. A small fighter base. Grass field. Maybe 4,000 feet. Not long. Not for a B-17. But all they had. All they'd get. Lawley aimed for the threshold. The aircraft was heavy. Slow. Barely controllable with one hand. Mason finished cranking. 198. 199. 200. The gear should be down. Should be locked. He couldn't verify it. Couldn't check it. Just had to believe. He moved back to help Lawley. 400 feet. The fire on No. 3 suddenly flared brighter. A fuel line let go. Fresh fuel feeding the flames. The wing was orange. Glowing. The metal expanding. Lawley could feel it in the controls. The wing wanted to fail. Wanted to fold. Wanted to quit. He kept it flying. Seraphine braced in the cockpit. Called to the crew and back. Brace for crash landing. Everyone who could move found a position. Grabbed something solid. The wounded were strapped down. Dempsey, Kobierecki, Braswell, the others, all of them waiting, hoping, praying. 200 feet. Lawley pulled back the last engine's throttle. Descent rate increased. The aircraft dropped. He couldn't flare properly. Needed two hands for that. Needed depth perception. Needed strength. He had none of those. Just had his left hand, his will, his crew depending on him. 100 feet. The runway rushed up. Trees on either side. Buildings. He aimed for the center. Held the aircraft steady. The stall warning buffet started. 70 miles per hour. 65. Right at the edge. The wing wanted to stall. Wanted to drop. He held it level. 50 feet. The fire was everywhere now. The entire No. 3 engine nacelle burning. Flames reaching toward the fuselage. Toward the fuel tanks. The wing could go any second. Could fold. Could explode. Lawley didn't look at it. Looked at the runway. At the grass. At home. 20 feet. The main gear touched first. Grass runway. Soft. The wheels dug in. The aircraft decelerated hard. Lawley held the control column back. Kept the tail up as long as he could. No brakes. No hydraulics. Just rolling friction. Grass drag. Gravity. The tail wheel came down. The nose dropped. The aircraft slowed more. Rolling. Bouncing. The burning wing trailing smoke and flame. They were down. On the ground. In England. At Red Hill. The B-17 rolled 3,000 feet. Slowed. Stopped. The fire still burning. Smoke pouring from No. 3. The wing glowing orange. But they were down. They were stopped. They were alive. Mason opened the top escape hatch. Seraphine opened the side door. The crew started evacuating, helping the wounded out. Dempsey first, then Kobierecki, then the others, moving fast. The fire was spreading. The fuel tanks could go. They had maybe seconds. Lawley sat in the left seat. His left hand still gripped the control column. He couldn't let go. The muscles had locked, cramped so hard they wouldn't release. Mason grabbed his hand, pried the fingers open, pulled Lawley out of the seat. They got everyone out. 10 men, 8 wounded, 1 dead. Murphy's body still in the right seat. They'd come back for him. After the fire. After it was safe. They carried the wounded clear. 100 yards, 200. Then they stopped, turned around, watched. Cabin in the Sky sat on the grass at RAF Red Hill. Number 3 engine burning, wing glowing, smoke rising, but intact. She'd brought them home. 4 hours and 26 minutes, from Leipzig to England. One-handed, on fire, with 8 men who would have died if Lawley had bailed out. The fire crews arrived at 17:08. Foam cannons, water hoses, they fought the fire, saved what they could. But 42-38109 would never fly again, damaged beyond repair. Salvaged 3 days later by the 2nd Strategic Air Depot. Lawley stood on the grass, his face bandaged, his right arm useless, his left arm shaking. He watched the firefighters work, watched his crew receiving medical attention, watched the sun setting over England. They were home, all of them, because he'd stayed with the ship, because he'd flown one-handed, because he'd refused to let them die. 6 months later, Lieutenant General Carl Spaatz pinned the Medal of Honor on Lawley's uniform, the nation's highest award, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, for saving his crew, for flying the impossible mission, for bringing them home. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about pilots who saved lives with courage. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure William Lawley doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.